The warden in charge of the federal jail where pedophile Jeffrey Epstein killed himself, quote unquote, quietly retired from the Bureau of Prisons in February. Lamine Ndiaye oversaw the Metropolitan Correctional Center in Manhattan when the disgraced financier died.
Epstein was jailed in 2019 on charges of sex trafficking minors. He allegedly hung himself while in prison, sparking a federal probe into how Epstein really died. Ndiaye's transfer to any other prison, let alone retire, was supposed to be delayed by the DOJ until it wrapped up its investigation.
Interesting. So this is the warden. And, obviously there were a lot of just so happened to be that this camera wasn't working and this guard fell asleep and all of these just so happened. And then it just was in that very moment, Epstein knew to hang himself, which is why so many of us don't quite believe the story. Yeah. That is the official story that he killed himself. So this warden, it's really interesting that he quietly retired. And that they, what do you make of this?
Yeah, and that there was a lack of accountability, that he wasn't supposed to transfer and get a new job, but he was in fact transferred and got a new job. In these cases, what tends to happen is people get promoted up and out in contexts where normal people would have been fired, punished, gotten some kind of rebuke for having let something bad happen on their watch. And the reporting on this shows that this is not the only kind of bad event that has happened under this guy's watch at these facilities. Yeah. And yet it, of course, is going to draw suspicion that someone in this position is never suffering any consequences for, frankly, very obviously being bad at his job, as one responsibility being to keep prisoners safe, at very least alive.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, I wonder where they're even at with this investigation, if they're still continuing the investigation or if it's just like, oh, yeah, we're kind of looking into that. But they've already kind of looked into as much as they can and they're not really, maybe they'll keep it open or something. But it really does kind of call into question what sort of investigation they did or plan on continuing to do regarding. Even if they all believe, yes, Epstein absolutely did it, they need to be investigating the cracks in the system that allowed for what happened to happen, because there's plenty of other people who do kill themselves in prisons, and they need to find out how this is going on. What are the conditions in the prisons that's causing people to get to that point, right? All of that needs to be investigated and corrected.
Absolutely. Look, there are a lot of things on the docket with respect to prison reform, and it feels a little weird to be emphasizing this, but I do think this is important. There are people who have observed that after, an initial media cycle about this stuff, a lot of the coverage that I continue to read about Jeffrey Epstein happens from alternative media sources. There are 1,000,001 podcasts devoted to tracking this. There's a lot of, conspiracy theorizing. I mean, when there's not mainstream reporting, everything becomes the realm of conspiracy. But there are people who say the reason that we're not getting more of an investigation and more mainstream coverage of this story is because there are so many famous and important people across the ideological spectrum who are tied to Jeffrey Epstein and who would prefer all of this to go away.
Yeah, especially powerful political leaders or family members of powerful political leaders. That seemed to be the sort of the theme in the black book that Jeffrey Epstein had, was all of these people were in some sort of position of power in various countries around the world where they could influence, legislate, and make certain concessions to certain countries and whatnot. So there's a real theme that's going on there. And yeah, people don't want to investigate. They don't want to get too deep into it because it's not just taking down, I think, a few actors, right? In this situation, these are really powerful people. So that makes it more delicate, I suppose, but all the more important for us average people that want to know the levels of corruption or blackmail even that our leaders might be beholden to.
Yeah. From, Prince Andrew to, Ghislaine Maxwell being at Chelsea Clinton's wedding, to pictures with Donald Trump and Bill Clinton. Everybody's involved. Yeah. And so with all of the grooming discourse being what it is interesting to see these stories not really intersect in a meaningful way. But, I'm interested to see where this goes and if this is an avenue into a little bit of more insight of what happened on a practical level in that prison, to bring us to this place where we never actually got the trial that would have shed some light on this whole situation.
by design, many of us believe. By design, Brie. We never got it. All right. Well, we will keep you updated on any more of the developments, if there are any, around Jeffrey Epstein's case, but certainly Ghislaine Maxwell as well. So, but we will have more Rising after this.